All right, it's a memoir. It's a thriller. It's a confessional. It's therapy at work, in work. Tilly, over to you.
Our next guest was a Wimbledon champion by 17, won 49 career singles, and spent 8 months in prison. He's revealing all about his life behind bars in his new book, Inside, which is out tomorrow. So let's welcome a guest with some serious stories to tell. What the hecker? It's Boris Becker!
Let's hear it for Boris Becker. All right, Boris, good morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Oh, you look so well. What a book. Congratulations. Well done. It's a page turner. It's beautifully written. It's a great format to it. There's articles in there that drop out of nowhere. There's emails that Boris was sent, letters that he was sent from friends, people you don't know, people he doesn't even know. Some kind of book. Let's go straight in with Wimbledon. Watching Wimbledon from a prison cell as opposed to being there playing or commentating. What was that like, Boris?
Well, that was probably the most emotional time I had inside because, I coached Djokovic for a couple of years and we call each other family now. And he made a call, to his agent, Eduardo Teldi, to get in touch with my wife, whether she wants to see the first round together with my son Noah. And then, Lillian, of course, agreed. But then Edo said, you know the drill. Once he's winning, you got to stick with the winning team. So she stayed all 7 matches, and I was able to see the BBC inside. So we had this little television in that cell. And then, with each match he was winning, once he got to the final, I really woke up. It was a turning point in my mindset, in my mentality, because I feel like I don't belong inside. I belong on that Wimbledon center court drive with Novak.
Yeah, I mean, that was some moment for you, wasn't it, when you had heard that Novak and his team invited your son and your wife to Wimbledon, and you could see them on TV. And it was also a pivotal moment for you with your fellow prisoners, because they sort of knew who you were. They didn't really care who you were. Prison isn't like that. You talk about that in the book. It's really revealing. It's really instructive. I couldn't believe some of the things that you'd written. And then what seemed to happen is they came on board and they were all cheering for your guy.
That's right. When I first got in HMP Wandsworth, they didn't know much about my tennis history. They knew I was a famous guy, but they really didn't know why, and they couldn't care less. I became a number. My number was 82923 EV. That's how would they call me, especially the wardens. And only when Wimbledon came on TV and then, Subaka and John McEnroe started speaking about me and giving me shout outs, then they put a 1-1 together. And that's why it was important, because otherwise they may have gotten the wrong idea if I was famous or rich or anything else. So it was good for me that they didn't know who I was.
And then every time Djokovic won a point, you heard the banging and the clanging and the cheering.
Yeah, they knew he was my man. And then, the one thing you're in the cell, if you watch TV and you like what you're watching, you're banging at the door. And especially on that Sunday afternoon when he was in the final, he was starting to beat Nick Kyrgios, then the banging at the doors became louder and louder, and the screaming. And then once he won that match point, for like 10 minutes, you couldn't hear your own voice because of all the loud banging. This was the atmosphere, when I was inside on that Sunday afternoon. Crazy.
Yeah, and all the time, they're cutting to his team, in the box like they do in the players' box and the friends and families box, and all the time you're seeing Lillian and Noah there. And is it fair to say that you cried more watching Wimbledon than being part of it?
Oh, much more. I mean, everything that I had inside, it came out. I started crying for the first time very, very heavily, and just maybe it was a cleansing moment. Maybe I had to go through this, on that final. That I remembered. I remember the good days. I remembered, my time as a tennis player. And I think that was a turning point for me inside. That I accepted my fate, I accepted my karma, and from that moment on, life got a little bit easier because I was trying to make the most of it.
Yeah, and then you also, when certain prisoners saw your family, more sort of bridges were crossed as far as your fellow inmates were concerned, and that continued to happen. As far as Djokovic was concerned, he features in not more than one of the sections about that are called Cell Dreams. Just explain to people listening what the Cell Dreams sections of the book are about, and Agassi features in there, and your time coaching Djokovic features in there.
If you're not enhanced, if you spend 22 hours inside a small little cell, So the only way to escape is starting to dream, starting to think of the good old days, starting to dream of the people that matter, that made a difference. And of course, Djokovic came up, and of course, Agassi came up because you were living inside your head. Otherwise, you were going crazy. You have anxiety attacks. It's claustrophobic in here. You're hungry. So the only way to survive is, go into your brain, go into your dreams. I was 54 at the time, so I've got quite a colorful life until then. So I rethought every moment that mattered and that was important. And, hence I thought a lot about my days with Djokovic and Agassi.
Yes, your reflections about Agassi, again, they're so concise. These sections are so concise. There's so much in there. You talk about Agassi and you talk about the fact that you really didn't take him seriously enough when he turned up, and that sort of took you by surprise. And by the time you realised and gave him the respect that he deserved, it was almost too late and the train had left the station. Is that about it?
That's correct. When I came on the scene in '85, I was branded a new superstar, and I liked it. We all have a little bit vain, and we like when people appreciate us. So when he came on the scene in the early '90s with his long, colorful hair and the earrings, and born and raised in Vegas, I thought he was a clown, but he took all the publicity, all the attention away from it. Make matters worse, he was a really good tennis player. And then he started to beat me, and he took away all that status that I had. So I was seriously, can I say off in the show? I was very upset.
You
I
said
was
it.
very upset about the arrival of Andrew Agassi. Yeah, I didn't like him.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
straight behind him comes Pete Sampras.
Exactly. So you had these two Americans that were better than me, point blank. And then I always play tennis to win. I always play tennis to win Wimbledon, and to be the number one player. I didn't want to play just to be part of it or to be happy with the semifinal. But when Agassi and Sampras came along, they were clearly better than me. Hence the reason I decided to retire, even though I was still pretty young tennis player. I couldn't beat them on their best day, even when I had my best day.
Yeah, you said you had to be playing on your best day and then had some normal day and then maybe you would win.
Yeah.
And when you were at the top of the game, you could beat anybody in the world. That was the thing, wasn't it? And looking at tennis now and how long tennis players go for, had you had a crystal ball, would you have dug in a bit deeper? Would you have stuck around for longer? Would you have I mean, you can't change things, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, look, I was a bit tired, a bit burned out when I was 25, and in hindsight, I think I should have taken a break, leave of absence for 6 months until I had my joy back. I was like a tennis playing machine. Manager says this, tournament contracts are here, sponsorship is this. So I was in a whirlwind for 7, 8 years, and I got tired. There wasn't a reason why I picked up a tennis racket. It was to have fun and to play and to win. So because I didn't take a break, I felt like I was on the losing end in my late 20s. Ultimately, I took a break while I retired at 31, which today is the best years of a tennis player. Think of the success Djokovic and Federer and Nadal had in their 30s, but they had their own schedule. I wasn't allowed in my 20s to have my own schedule. That's why I became burned out.
And being in prison, I mean, you would never wish for that to happen, but it has helped you unpeel the chaos of the second half of the first half of your life.
I think so. I think my tennis career ended well, but then once I turned 35, wanted to get into business. Now I never studied business, right? I never went to university, so I rounded myself plain and simply with the wrong people. They took advantage of a naive, young Boris Becker. Yes, I had a lot of money, and all these advisors wanted to get the hold of that, and not really thinking about my best interest, very much about their best interest. Now, I made some major mistakes, and that ultimately caused why I was incarcerated, why I had to go to prison. So I'm not going to blame anybody else. It was my fault. I've chosen these people. I take full responsibility for my mistakes, but there's reasons why things went sour.
Yeah, the irony of the story is you earning £1.05 per shift in prison as an enhanced prisoner. That is somebody who's got a job, up against the millions that you still owed on the outside. And what was the most you think you were accused of owing, do you think, cumulatively?
Well, thank you that you're asking me that question, because I want to set the record straight. A lot of people had a big mouth about what I was earning and everything. So After my tennis career, I walked away with about 30 million euros. That was my fortune. Within the first year, I had my divorce, with my ex-wife Barbara. So 15 million went straight away. So I was left with 15 million, 1 5. And I had this money, I invested it in real estate, I had this money. I just didn't have the income anymore as I had as a tennis player. But my outgoings was high, maintenance more for my 3 children for the next 15 or 20 years was enormous. And I'm not going to, tell you the exact detail, but it was a high 5-figure amount every month for, 15 to 20 years. And that was eaten away from me. So the reason I got into insolvency because I owned 3.5 million euros to an English bank. That was correct. But we were fighting for the interest. They wanted me to pay 25% interest on 3.5 million, which I didn't accept. That's why we went to court. All the other stories are not true. I hate to say it, it doesn't create a headline, but that was the truth. Now, the insolvency system is quite complicated in the UK, right? It's very different to Germany or anywhere else in the world. And the trustee that was allowed to accept any potential claim that he had just to prolong the insolvency, which he did. So my insolvency started in 2017. I paid an out-of-court settlement with the bank. I fully paid my dues, which at that time was about 10 million. But unfortunately, the trustee of the insolvency accepted a claim of 40 million Swiss franc from a former Swiss business partner, even though I won against him in a Swiss court on 2 occasions. So this man has no title. This claim is not true, but the trustee could pretty much accept what he wanted to prolong the insolvency. That's exactly what happened.
So you were in court on 24 counts, just around the corner from where we are, actually, in Southwark. So you literally you could spit and hit it. And no wonder you didn't come in person. It's the last place you want to be triggered by. You see, you're in court on 24 counts. 20 of them are dropped, 4 are upheld, and then you have a main sentence of 30 months, and then you have 3 concurrent of 18 running. And so you're in prison for the sentence is 900 and something days. The first night you spend in prison in Wandsworth, you don't sleep because nobody told you about the screaming, and you don't sleep well at all for the first few nights. You don't sleep at all for 1 minute for the first night. The last night you spend in prison, you also don't sleep. Can you just tell us about this, the absolute opposite ends, the stark polar opposites of the 2 reasons for you not sleeping on the first night and the last night?
Well, nobody explained me prison life, especially at HMP Wandsworth. It's one of the most notorious, shall I say, dangerous prisons in the UK. Nobody told me about it. Maybe they didn't want to scare me. So the first night was a Friday night, and then you're exhausted because of all the drama and everything, but you can't sleep because there's about 2,000 prisoners in there, and there's many cells left and right to me, and they're screaming. Some of them are harming themselves. Some of them are trying to kill themselves. Some of them want attention, but I didn't know that. So there's a little button inside of my cell, which I use quite frequently the first couple of nights, asking the listeners. The listeners is a group of prisoners that have respect in the wardens. They're long timers, and they sort of serve between the wardens and newbies like I was. So I asked them, listen, the guy next door, he's screaming at top of his lungs. Maybe he's killing himself. And they just went, get used to it, Boris. You're going to fall asleep in a couple of days, but that's what prison life is. So there was no real explanation. It's just accepted because he had no other choice. So the first weekend, literally until Tuesday, when I got up for the first time, I realized that it's going to be every night like that. So either I'm going to sleep at night or they certainly won't stop. And fast forward, 230 nights forward, the last night I didn't sleep out of excitement. I knew that at some time in the morning, it was 6 a.m., the wardens are going to come, open the cell door, and let me leave the prison, as a free man. And I couldn't sleep either. And I was trying to watch, at the time there was the World Cup in Qatar. So France, was playing Morocco in the semi-final. So I was watching all these football games, but then there's sometime at night, I obviously couldn't close my eyes out of excitement. So yeah, the first couple of nights and the last couple of nights in prison, I did not sleep.
It's so good that you can laugh. So good that you can laugh about it now. Also, you became a fan of loose women while you're in there.
Yeah. Look, the first 5 or 6 weeks until you're enhanced, you're watching. I had three channels. I had the BBC, I had ITV, and I had Channel 4. And especially the mornings, they wake you up by 6 o'clock. And then what do? You're only allowed to leave your cell at about 11:30 to grab some food. So what do? And yes, I had a couple of books, but how much can you read in the morning? Then I started watching breakfast television, and the most entertaining for me, the most exciting was Lorraine and Lou's Women. Because it wasn't too intellectual, it wasn't too serious, it was colorful, and the hours went by quickly. So that's what I did.
It's so funny because I'm reading your book, and I'm just thinking, I've read so many books, I've written a few myself, and I'm thinking, this is either funny and true or really clever, because those shows that he's mentioning are the perfect shows to sell his book on. Have you been invited on Loose Women to talk about your book?
Look, in those days, I didn't know I was going to write a book. Those days, I didn't know how long I was going to stay in prison. It's the honest truth. What's the point in writing a memoir if you leave away some of the things that are maybe embarrassing or maybe they don't sound good? I want to be my own authentic self from now for the rest of my life. I got into trouble because I was starting to play a role after my tennis career. I was trying to please people who weren't worth it. So hence also the different hairstyle. I bleached my hair, I had it long. I was trying to be someone that I was not. One of the first things I did after I came out was we chinzers don't have to stick together anyway. So I had to cut off my bleached hair. Now it's a little bit of ginger on top and a little bit of gray, but this is who I am. Take it or leave it.
I love it. I love the Renaissance. Really genuinely love the butterfly from the chrysalis, from the caterpillar that your story tells. It's great because you can really, they say you only live twice. You only get two lives, and you only get the second life once you realize your first life is over. And that's it feels to me that's where you are now. It feels like many of us, for whatever reason, in our 50s are like that. Look, I can't wait for my 60s. I'm really looking forward to it. You talk about squandering money when you earned loads, and it takes one to know one, so no judgment here, Boris, whatsoever.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you once at a Lakers game,
Yeah.
and I waved to you, and it's like I was on the wood. I paid the price of a small house to do what they call sitting on the wood. You were behind me. Jack Nicholson was there. Burt Bacharach was there. You know the score. Is it true that you used to take Concorde just to go to the Lakers games?
Yeah, look, in the mid-90s, I had loads of money. Money didn't matter. And if the Lakers were playing the Knicks in New York, I took a Saturday morning Concorde from Paris, not from London. And then I watched the Saturday night game and then the Sunday lunch game, and I took a first class back on Sunday night back home. So yeah, I mean, money was just a number. It wasn't something I thought about because I had a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just case. And in hindsight, you said something very important. Obviously, we all want to be forever young, right? We all want to be 25 forever. Guess what? It doesn't happen that way. And then often in your 50s, you look back and you want to change and everything. You can't even change that. So you have to accept of who you are now to get a peace of mind. I'm happy with my life right now. Yes, I'm not as rich anymore, but I'm in a good place. I'm with a woman I love. We're expecting our first child in December. If you read this book, I mean, it's the God honest truth. If you read this book, this couldn't have been true. This is a story made up, but it's what happened to me. Thankfully, I think I'm learning my lessons. Thankfully, my mid 50s are much better than my mid 40s. Is because of this realization that we can't be young forever.
Yeah, Lillian shines bright through this book. I mean, she clearly is amazing. And when you were in prison, you didn't realize that you could make phone calls. You have a phone call in your cell. You didn't know this.
Right.
You thought some things were going to be that weren't, and you didn't think things were going to be that ended up being. And
Yeah.
so Boris has a phone in his cell. And he realised he can phone Lillian. Oh my gosh, I can phone Lillian. You then phone Lillian, but she won't answer the phone because she doesn't know who the heck's ringing her because the world's ringing her. And the last person in the world she expects to be ringing her is you. So she didn't answer the blimmin' phone.
That's true. I mean, I didn't know how life was anyway, let alone having a landline phone. inside. Obviously, you can only phone 15 minutes, but it costs money. So as a new prisoner, you get in 15 pounds a week. Out of the 15 pounds, you have to share it. You wanna buy some food on the canteen. Every Friday there's a list, but everything is expensive. So the listeners told me, how about you keep half for the food and half for the phone calls, because you're gonna run out of money. And then, as you mentioned earlier, it's important to get a job, because each day you can earn another £1. With 2 jobs, you get £2. So by the end of it, yeah, I had about £30 a week that I could use, which is all right. But the first couple of weeks, not. So my first phone calls, they were expensive. So certainly, I wanted to have the people that I called, which was usually only Lillian, to pick up the phone. So she felt so sorry and embarrassed, but she couldn't pick it up. Obviously, that changed. After we had our routine, I had a morning call and I had an evening call. But we also know that all these calls been listened to. The wardens and everything are listening to every phone call you make. So you have to really be careful which subject you talk about, what you talk about, and so forth. So yeah, that's another rule I learned in prison.
And then again, another irony, then you became too busy as a maths and English teacher to call Lillian. You were too busy. I'm too busy now. I got a job, Lillian.
Yeah, that was very important in the first prison in Wandsworth, is that I quickly, through the help of the listeners, I was gotten a job. And think the irony: a German is teaching English in HMP Wandsworth and math. Okay, I was just being insolvent, so I'm teaching math and I'm teaching English to my fellow inmates. So the irony couldn't be bigger. But I was busy, therefore I couldn't be really waiting for phone calls, because I wanted to make my £1 or £2 a day. That changed in HMP Huntercombe, because then I was allowed to work in the gym, and I became a Stoic teacher. And so I had 2 jobs again, which keeps you busy, which made you a little bit of money. And so I was starting to be organized, the longer I was in prison.
And obviously, you in the world of tennis, you've met people you'll never forget. Some you'd rather forget, some that you thought you'd rather forget, and you now know and are friends with. But the gang you met in prison, those names, so emotional. Reading about them, Ike and Mo and Andy and Alex and Jake. I mean, speak about those guys for a second.
Well, they all were responsible that my life is good. I mean, quite literally, they saved my life in various forms. Without these men, I wouldn't be the person that I'm now. You're all alone. Another thing I didn't know, how dangerous prison is. I mean, people get killed every year in Wandsworth, and people get injured seriously. We just don't know about it, because we're only prisoners, right? We're not important anymore. And these guys realize that I don't have any clue what's happening in here. This guy needs protection, and that's what they did, and each in their own form. And I'll be thankful for the rest of my life. I'm still in touch with them, because some of them are still inside, some of them are outside, and prison changes you.
Talking in the gym, you did the classic thing that you see in the movies. You did actually at one point turn your cell into a mini workout area, didn't you?
Well, what do you do when you're incarcerated for 22 hours? Thankfully, I bought 2 large biographies, one about Karl Lagerfeld and one about Barack Obama. And after reading them, what are you going to do with it? So I used them as, for weightlifting. I used them for push-ups. I used them for various exercises. Also, the walk in the cell is very small. So I did about 50 laps the right way, 50 laps the left way, just to be, just to have some exercise. But you get in crazy ideas how you're going to beat those 22 hours.
You talked about stoicism, and then you described brilliantly in the book how your 2 worlds met in prison when Pat Cash came to talk in the prison. First of all, can you just, for people who don't know, frame your history, give us the headlines of yours and Pat's history on court, and then explain how the heck he ended up giving a talk at the prison you were in at the time about the thing you were studying at the time.
That's right. No, Pat Cash was a very, very good tennis player, but he wasn't as good as me. So on the court, we clashed a couple of times, quite famously in the Wimbledon quarterfinal in 1987, when he fell over the net and I fell over his side. In those days, we didn't have any microphones, so he started swearing at me. I started swearing at him. Nowadays, we would have been fined a fortune, but back in the day, we just could do pretty much what we wanted. So we always became nemesis. I didn't like him, he didn't like me. Fast forward, he also had his trials and tribulation, and he picked up Stoicism to better his life. So I want to mention Andy Small. He was one of the wardens who he ran the gym, but he became my Stoic teacher, and he befriended Pat Cash, and he thought, look, Pat is coming into prison because he wanted to have a talk about Stoicism. You're a student now. I know you have a bit of history. Well, why don't you guys meet? And hopefully you're not gonna beat each other up again. But out of this became a real friendship because we both went through hard things in our life, and we're now very solid Stoics.
Wow. I mean, what are the, you can, like you say, you couldn't write it. You're laughing.
Crazy.
It's great to see you laughing and smiling. I remember you came on our show a few years ago, and clearly you were in the middle of something, because I said something to you before you came on the air, and it was about your house in Mallorca. And the house is mentioned a lot in the book. There was this, you had this mountaintop house in Mallorca, and I saw it for sale on Knight Frank the week you came in, and I sort of mentioned it to you, and you didn't blank me, but you just sort of looked through me, and I thought, oh, something's going on there, and I could sense something was going on. So were you in the middle of everything then? Because it seemed like you weren't present, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, no. I was in the middle of selling the house because they would have paid my debt off for the private bank. But the public started to know that I was in financial dire straits. Hence, they didn't want to give me the offer that I needed to pay off my debt. I was in the middle of that scenario when I came to show on your show last. So maybe I should have opened up then. It's no good. I'm too public. Too many people know things. So I should have talked more open maybe earlier about some of the things that I went through. So that's why this Mallorca house is so instrumental in my whole insolvency. If I could have sold this house earlier, I wouldn't have been insolvent.
You wouldn't have been insolvent. You wouldn't have been through this sort of hell on earth that is going to prison, rightly or wrongly, and that's for other people to judge or make their own minds up about. Having said all that, you wouldn't be where you are now, and we're all exactly where we're meant to be. And you know this better than anybody else because you've been in prison, you've studied Stoicism, you've had all the lies printed about you, some truths, mostly lies. You've now written this book. You've been an elite champion. You've been the best tennis player on the planet. Now, of course, as I said before, you wouldn't wish this on yourself. But I am guessing, and it doesn't take a genius to guess this, that you probably couldn't be in as good a place you are now had all this not happened.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. When you're that successful as a young tennis player, right? Every door opens. You're never going to hear the word no. It can't be done. On top of it, you have millions in the bank. So you think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You think you're Superman. Every woman wants to go out with you. Every president wants to meet you. There's literally nobody that tells you no. It gets to your head. You go crazy. You're going to take advantage. And that's why I lost my path. I didn't have any borders, and I wanted to test out how far I can go before someone says, no, that's too far. That was a mistake. So I'm back to square one. I know my limit. There's a lot of people that were telling me, no, I paid a heavy price for just going too far. And maybe it was necessary, all this bad situation for me to be in the best part of my life. Insolvency and unfortunate prison time doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. You do a couple of mistakes, you cover them, you do a couple more mistakes, you cover them as well. Little by little, you're in a really, really difficult, situation. So all this is done. I don't think I would have been alive today if I didn't have the incarceration, I didn't have the penalties, because I wouldn't have gone crazy. I'm honestly speaking here. So for me to, also in those days, you drink too much, you eat too much, you do all the things you're not supposed to do. It's a dead-end street I was on. So in hindsight, we're all smarter. In hindsight, I'm saying thank you. Thanks that what I went through, because I'm clear again. I know who my friends are. I know who my enemies are. And most importantly, I know where don't want to go back to.
Inspiring words. it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I have been in a similar situation as far as, success and money's concerned. You know that. We've talked about this before. And it's so interesting that you frame it like that, and you are where you are right now. And whenever I try to make money, I'm a DJ, I'm a TV person. I'm not a business person. Whenever I've tried to make money, I have made loads of money in the past, but by owning the thing that I loved by accident. And this, because of my self-delusion and hubris, I then convinced myself I was a businessman. And when you stuck to tennis, all you did was earn money as Novak Djokovic's coach. Isn't it? Here's an idea, Boris. Why don't we just do what we're good at?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, you're spot on. You wanna change your tennis shirt, or I did, into a suit and a tie, and I want to look like a businessman. But I'm not. So and even now, of course, I'm a bit smarter than I was 20 years ago. But it's important for me to surround myself just with a small group who are in business better than me. I'm good at what I do. I love tennis. I work on TV. I cover all the 4 Grand Slams. I have a couple sponsorship deal. I have a podcast. I'm good in speaking about what I love most, which is tennis. Fine, I can live with that. I don't need 5 houses. I don't need 5 cars. I did that. I had it, and guess what happened to me? So I'm just not playing a role anymore. I'm just going to be myself.
You look lighter. I mean, you look fit. You look well. You look peaceful in your face. Your face has got its symmetry back. You know what I mean, though.
I got a little big there.
Yeah, no, but not only that. I didn't mean that. But you go wonky. When you're wonky inside, you look wonky on the outside. Your face is a billboard for the person that you really are. I mean, that's just the way it is. I've got to ask you this about tennis. What did you say to Djokovic over those 3 years that helped him get back on a winning streak? Because whatever it was worked.
Well, he called me when he became number 2, and I picked up the phone and say, thanks for the flowers, but you have a really, it's a small problem. Most people wish just to be number 2 in the world. And he said, Boris, I'm a winner. I want to be number 1 and everything, but I liked your commentary. I liked your honesty about my mistakes. So please be honest with me as a coach. And I said, all right. Okay, Novak, I respect you. The reason we go to Melbourne, the reason I leave my family behind for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks is there's only one reason: we're going to take the trophy back home. The final isn't good enough. The semi-final isn't good enough. So whatever distracts you from reaching that goal, I'm not good with it. Either we're going to go full on tennis and you're good enough, or we're going to change a couple things on your court positioning, a couple of things on your serve, because I want you to be the best again, but you have to pay the price. It took him a while because he said, Boris, nobody talks to me like that. I said, I can't help you. I'm like this. Either I'm allowed to be honest with you, because you got so many people that sugarcoat the situation. It's important for you to become the real Novak Djokovic again. That was really my mantra. That was my speech. And this is why until today, we call each other family, because still now, in a moment of dire straits, Novak calls me, I tell him my truth. Because a superstar like that doesn't have many people like that.
Do you sleep better nowadays?
I sleep again. There was a time I didn't sleep. My mind was going crazy. I mean, how many beers can you drink to fall asleep, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much. So I sleep again. I sleep on the edge of the bed though, because my bed in prison was so small that and also in prison you don't want to sleep at the wall, because the wall is cold, it's moist in the corner, so you sleep on the side. I have a beautiful bed now, but even if my wife isn't there, I sleep on the very edge on the left-hand side, because of my habits I got inside. Crazy.
The whole book is a love letter to Lilian as well. I mean, would you like to say anything to people listening and people who are hopefully going to buy the book and read the book and learn from the book about Lilian?
Look, it's a love letter to her, and the overriding message is, love still exists. At my age, in my early 50s, I thought I'm not made for relationships, right? I was with women maybe for the wrong reasons. Maybe they were with me for the wrong reasons. I gave up. I thought it doesn't exist. But when I met Lilian, I was in the worst time of my life. It was in 2018 in the spring. We met on a birthday, and I thought she was attractive and interesting. But it took me 10 months just to get her phone number. Okay, because she didn't trust me. She read about me. She said, I'm trouble. And the moment that changed for her, when she looked at me in the eye in early 19, she said, Boris, how are you? And I went, what do you mean? Yeah, but how are you? Nobody asked me the question before because I was bad. I was not good. I said, I'm insolvent. I had bad luck with women. And I'm maybe have trouble with the law. So if you don't get up and run away right away, you might have to listen to a long story that I'm about to tell you. Well, now 6 years later, she's my wife and she's expecting our first baby together. So, I mean, she stuck with me when everyone left. She was the only point of contact I had outside. I didn't want to speak to anybody else. So then she called up my mother, my sister, my kids, even my ex-wife. She was the point of contact who was saying, Boris is not easy for him inside, but he's okay. He's going to find a way to survive. So, yeah, I couldn't applaud her more. It's the good news is that if you wait long enough, maybe love is around the corner when you least expect it.
Yeah, and that old affirmation, it's a cliche because it's true. You can't really love anyone else unless you love yourself first. And she gave you the space and also the mirror to look at yourself and to do that in, and then you can fall in love with somebody else again. I mean, that's probably where we are. You're wearing black today. You look great, mate. I haven't seen you look this good for such a long time. You're in black. Is your bank account in the black?
I'm good again. I'm knock on wood. Yes, yes. I'm making money. I'm allowed to keep it. And I have a wife that's watching it like a hawk. Okay.
Good.
So
Good.
if there's any transaction I want to do, I have to ask her first, which is perfectly fine. I know she means it.
All right. Thank you for being here today. I really enjoyed the book, Boris. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Let's hear it for Boris Becker, please. Thank you.